So building custom applications with Fabrik in the Joomla sites. So what we're going to talk about in here is what is Fabrik, why would we want to use it, and what do we need to get started to use it. Well, then we're going to kind of dig in. I'm going to show you the different parts, because I think one of the biggest hurdles for people with Fabrik is just kind of getting that initial, like, I don't know where everything is. And once you get past that, then you can go to town building stuff. And then we're going to talk about, like, kind of what would be your first steps at building a little app in here. And then we're going to actually, time provided here, we're going to build just a tiny little sample app, and then we'll do questions at the end. So what is Fabrik? Fabrik is a highly flexible Joomla component for building custom web applications, and that's the little description on the site. But that is really what it is. Now, you could be as simple as I'm going to use Fabrik for building a custom form on my website, because maybe that's what you need, and it can do that. Or you could go on up and say, well, I'm going to build a whole portal site, and it could do that for you as well. The core of what Fabrik is doing for you is it is giving you access to your database, and is allowing us to create input forms to and from the database. We can actually create tables on our database or other databases, not just our Joomla one. And then it also gives us the ability to create the views back. Do I want a list view? Do I want a details view? So it gives me that ability to create the different views there. So forms, different ways to show things, database connection. The other cool thing about Fabrik is at every level throughout it utilizes the Joomla access levels. So that way, if you've already have your website set up with access levels, you can keep incorporating those throughout your Fabrik application that you're building. So why would I use Fabrik? So there's no other native Joomla component out there that does exactly what I want. Let's say I want a safety reporting application for my employees, and there's nothing out there that really does what I need it to do exactly without having to do a lot of modifications. And I wouldn't want to touch the core of any component. So I can't do that with Joomla. I can't do that with any other component out there without modifying it. I definitely need to put things into a database and show things out of there. And I need granular access control on all these. So that's when I would want to look at something like Fabrik, because we need a custom component, but we don't want to start from scratch, right? We don't want to be continuously updating every single time Joomla updates, because believe me, it's a lot. And so if you've ever built a custom component and then had to maintain it, it's a nightmare sometimes with clients, because every time there's an update, there could be little things that have to be updated in your custom component. And I want a product that's being used by other people. I mean, Fabrik is being used by a lot of different users. We have over 38,000 users on the forum alone talking about it. So it's open source, so there's always improvement. There's people that contribute from all around the world. And everybody's kind of familiar with that. We're in the Joomla world, so we're in open source world. We get it. And we want to save time and money, because it's going to be a faster deployment than a custom extension build. So what do we need to get started? If we're going to do this, we would, of course, need to go download and have a Joomla website. We would need Fabrik. And you can install Fabrik either from the install from web inside of Joomla now, or you can go and download it from the Fabrikar website, and notice it's fabrikar.com. You can go and download it from there, or you could go to GitHub and get the latest and greatest right there. We're committing all the time on GitHub to Fabrik, and so a lot of times you'll see on the forum, if there's a problem with something, it may tell you, hey, go get the GitHub, because it's going to have the fix already in there, and you don't have to wait for the next version to get the fix. And so it's on GitHub as well. So you have multiple ways to download Fabrik. And then this is what I always like to tell people. The other thing that you would need to start an application with Fabrik is you have to have a plan. You really do. I mean, and that goes to say with even if you're going to do a website, you don't just just install Joomla and start building it. You have a site map. You have an idea of where you're going. So you need that roadmap. So I always encourage people, especially when you're working with clients, this needs to be spelled out. It needs to be written out. so that everybody sees what's going to be built and what's going to be delivered. So let's take a little look at Fabrik. And I'm actually I'll open Fabrik in just a minute, and I want to show you the Fabrik website too. Though I was just telling you where you could download, so I'll show you where you can download it on there. When you install Fabrik, this is the the dashboard that you will see. Hold on one second. I'm going to exit out of here, and I want to show you guys the Fabrik website. Okay, so you can come here and you can click to download, or in the upper right, you'll find a link to go to our GitHub page. And you could also, again, install from the Install from Web inside of Joomla. On the Fabrik website, I do want to just point out that if you go to the download page, not only can you download Fabrik, but there are a ton of different add-ons that you can install into Fabrik. So there's all kinds of things like JStore form plugin. There's been a lot of things that have been built that you can plug into Fabrik to expand its capabilities. And then I always encourage people, if you are using Fabrik, go join the forum. Even if you're not a pro subscriber, you just want to get on there, because you can still look through all of the community posts. You can look at all even the professional support. You just can't post in there. But this is going to answer a ton of questions for you. And then we also have the wiki, which is where all the documentation is. And it's pretty well documented. I mean, in the open source world, I know documentation a lot of times it's kind of lackluster, but this is pretty well documented. Some of it needs to be updated. It's a big amount of wiki pages to update every time there's updates. So there are some things that need to be updated, but it has some really good things. And if you don't find it in the wiki, you can always, or if it doesn't work for what you find in the wiki, post in the forum and we'll get it updated. So I do encourage people to go to the Fabrik site and get involved if you're going to start building with it. And you might even get some ideas too on there, reading what people have done with it. It's pretty amazing. There's also a Facebook page you can follow. I know you guys have a Facebook page as well, and so we were linking to it on here. And we're also on Twitter. So if you're on any of the social media platforms, please follow us. Now, for today's presentation, I have installed literally just installed Joomla, and then I installed Fabrik and JCE so that I could have an easy editor in there. And so that's all this is a blank slate website is what I'll call it. And you can see right here, like you saw on my slide, this is the dashboard for Joomla. For Fabrik whenever you install it. So, and over here is the left-hand navigation, and we're going to go through that in the slides now. All right, so let me go back to this. Actually, you know what? One more thing I want to do before I do this. I have some samples I want to show you guys. Because the first time I did a Fabrik presentation, I showed everybody, I went through the slides and I was showing them all the parts of Fabrik, and they were like, well, that's really cool, but we didn't know what it could do until you got to the end and showed us you built something. And so I was like, okay, hang on. I'm going to show you guys first some things that have been built with Fabrik. So like I said, you could do a simple form. And I say simple form. You could do very elaborate forms. We have done forms, I kid you not, that were 6 tabs deep. They're long forms, just 450 element forms. I mean, they were huge forms. And you could do logical forms in here. This one, I don't think I have any logic in it, meaning I could say if they said email, then we could pop open and ask them for their email. I don't think we have it on this one, but because we're just asking them for it. But you can incorporate JavaScript show hides all throughout in the forms. And so you can make very complex forms or very simple forms. I would call this a simple form. Validation, so like validating different types of fields is built in as well. Things such as elements for calendars, this drop down, you can tie to other tables for your drop downs. So this is just a basic form. Also, you can do the new no CAPTCHA from Google, the reCAPTCHA, no CAPTCHA from Google is built in as well. It's one of our plugins you can install. This is going to show you, so if you want to go past that, so not just a form, but this school, they needed a parent dashboard for registrations. So, and this is all sample data, obviously. I'm not going to show you guys any of their real data, but what would happen when a parent registers, they would be able to go in, they would create parents, and so they could actually just add parents in here. When they, let me log back in. Oh, I'm logging in the wrong thing. Hang on a second. Well, it's okay. So you can see we can add parents in here. Actually, let me log back out and log in as let me log back in as a parent real quickly. Okay. So they can add all the parents. They can add their students in here, and when they add students, they'll have a lot more questions about students in here. And you can see that we can do things such as I think we have it down here, repeating. Well, we don't have any repeating groups. We've done other schools too, and sometimes they want to have multiple emergency contacts, so we can create repeating groups within inside of the forms. So in other words, you can do joins with your tables. So you can have very long forms. Then we can do registrations. So all of these things were built with Fabrik, but then they're tied together to create a cohesive application. It's a full parent portal where they can then come in here and do their release forms, where they can select their child, they can select the school year, have tons of different things they can select in here, as well as we can do digital signatures inside of the forms. And with this particular one, after they fill this out, they have an email for receipt. They will receive an email that has an attached PDF with their digital signature on it. So it's fully legal forms for them to do on here without having to do paper forms, and everything's delivered, as well as then they can always go in here and pull a PDF download if they want to. Same thing with the enrollment agreements, only with this one, they can even do payments through those, and so it's tied to PayPal for payments, and again has digital signatures, and then PDF invoices are generated off of that, or print screen invoices as well. So these are multiple things within Fabrik that we've built, and they're all tied together cohesively through the user ID, through the user levels as to what they can see and do. And then on the flip side of that, we have a staff portal, and then a staff portal, and I'm just showing you the demo information here as well. The staff, they can then see things such as the parents, the students, they can pull the enrollment agreements, the releases, all of that's on here as well. And you can see that there are some cool things that are built in, especially when you're doing your back end for staff. Things like grouping by, so you can group by. Maybe I want to group by. Maybe I have male, female in there, and I want to group by all the males or all the females. You can also do exporting to CSV as one of the things that's built in. I'm a super admin, so I actually see a little more. Like I can actually empty the whole table. We don't want to do that. But as you can see, there are a lot of built-in features on that is what we consider a list view right there. And then if I were to look at this would be can't do that from here. I forgot. That would be a details view, though. I'll show you a details view here in another example. So on our Houston Jug, we used Fabrik, and we built a member directory of our members. So this is looking at it from a public point of view. You can see the members and what information we let you see about each member. And so that was a list view. This is a details view of an individual record. And then we also have resources like for businesses. And so you can see here's a business, and this is the details view for that. It's got mapping built in, by the way. So we have elements in Fabrik that are maps that you can geocode according to whatever address is put in. And then if we can look, that same thing has been done with this is what's called a visualization, where we take that same data and we show it on a map. And so you can see here is a map that's pulling from that same list of information. So the same data we can show in different ways. And again, this is called a visualization in Fabrik. There's also things such as calendars. So if you have dated material, you could do a calendar visualization. All right, so that's just a few examples. I just wanted you guys to kind of see some of the things that are being built with this. And then there are some even much more complex things than what I just showed you, but I like for you to just kind of get an idea of some of the things that can be built. All right, so let's go back to our slideshow now. So the home page is kind of, the dashboard is just what it is. There's links that go back to documentation, and then you're always going to have your left-hand nav there. One thing I do like to point out to people is in your global options, that's where you can turn on Fabrik Debugging. And there's actually 2 levels of debugging. You have Fabrik Debugging, which is kind of going to run the same way as your Joomla debug does. But then we also have a debug for PDF. And what that does basically is it turns off the PDF generation download, and it lets it show it to you in the browser and gives you feedback on what's going wrong with your PDF creation. So if your PDF's not working properly, you can also debug on that as well. Connections. So when we first installed Joomla, when we first installed Fabrik into Joomla, one of the first things that it does is it sets up a database connection for us. By default, it will always set up a connection to your Joomla database. Now, you can set up more. So let's say, for instance, maybe you have a WordPress site and you need some information out of that database as well. You could connect to that database and pull it here, or a Magento site. Maybe you want to make a dashboard that is going to give you metrics on your sales in your Magento tied to something else. You could do it in here by tying to your Magento database and your Joomla database. So you can set up other connections in here if you need them. Packages, I'll bring it up, but it is no longer a feature right now. It's been removed. It was having issues, and so it's being rebuilt, and it'll be released later on. But what the packages are designed to do is allow you to build your full application in here, which will contain lots of lists and lots of groups and forms, and then package them and be able to move the whole thing over into another website running Joomla and Fabrik. It was just too specific. It wouldn't work on everything. You had to have exact same kind of settings. And so we pulled it out and reworking that whole section. Scheduling. Scheduling is basically cron jobs. So what I do like to point out here is that you will need to turn on the Fabrik cron plugins, as well as you may have to do some work with your hosting company as well if they won't allow you to run cron jobs or need you to do something specific. But you can set up cron jobs in here. So that way if you need it, every night to run through and send an email to someone who hasn't paid or whatever you want it to do, you can set up your cron jobs to run. Visualizations. So I showed you a visualization with the Google map on the Houston jug. There's other things, calendars, fusion charts, cover flow, slideshows. There's all types of visualizations that you can run in here. So that way, let's say you've built a little mini Craigslist in a website, and people can put a picture and they can put a description and all this. Well, you could also then create a little slideshow that shows up somewhere that's just showing the pictures of the things for sale linked back to their listings. So you've got a lot of different visualizations, and there are even more visualizations available to download. These are some of the ones that come with the core Fabrik, but there are others that have been built. Now, just like any other extension that you plug into Joomla, when you install it there and you go to create a new menu item, more than likely, if they've done the job right, there will be a new set of menu types that you can install. So with Fabrik, we've got a details view, which means I would want to point directly to a record, like the record I showed you of myself on the Houston jug. A form, which would be an input form, like we saw on the reservation form that we looked at. A list, which would be a list of records in a table. The packages, which those don't work, so that's not going to do anything for you because you won't have anything to link to. And then the visualizations. You want to link to a calendar or a map. You could link to it from here on a menu item. So that's one way you can get to them through your menus. You also have the ability to put these directly into components and into your articles using curly bracket tech terminology to pull in things such as forms on a page if you want to. And then the last thing that you'll see there is the CSV, because a lot of times people are just wanting someone to, they need an admin to just go in and pull a report, just pull a CSV of something. And so there's a quick menu item that you can make that just goes and pulls a CSV of a list. So which gets me to list. So all of the things that we just covered, I kind of consider broader topics on Fabrik, and not the nuts and bolts. So now we're getting to what I consider the nuts and bolts. So these are the things you have to have and you have to set up to build your app. So first of all are lists. Now, what is a list? And again, it's getting used to the terminology. A list is basically we're tying to a table, or you'll notice I put in parentheses S, tables, because we are definitely making a single connection to one table, but we can have joins to other tables, multiple tables. So what happens when we create this is we can either, one, connect to an existing table for our list, or we can actually create a new table in our database when we create a new list, which we will do. We'll do an example of that. Now, when you create a list, it does several things for you. It just goes ahead and gets you set up. It says, well, they've got a table, and it's going to need to have some data put into that table. So I'm going to go ahead and set up a form. Well, if you've created a new table from scratch, there's only 2 columns that are on it by default. Fabrik puts one, an ID, and which you're going to need, this auto counting, and a timestamp. So there's only 2 columns to start with. So it creates a form that has 2 columns. That has 2 fields, basically, the ID and the timestamp. They're hidden because they're automatic things. But it actually has created a form for us. It has created a group for the elements that are going to go on that form. Elements are the actual pieces that are on the form. But a group, they have to belong to a group. And groups are used for typically just for layout, but they can help you do some other things as well, such as I showed you on that one form where they had emergency contacts, and I told you we could make that where it's repeatable. So I could have a group of elements like emergency contact name, emergency contact phone number, and emergency contact email, and then I could say take that whole group of elements and make them repeatable, and so I'd repeat that section as many times as you let it, however you set it to. And we'll look at those again. Groups, I think, are one of the things that takes a little bit of time to understand what all you could do with them. Elements. Now, elements, this is the basic fields that are on your form. So this is going to be like the name field and the email field. These are your fields. In Fabrik, by default, you'll see there are a ton. What I've showed in that display, those are default elements that come in automatically for you. And then there are more that you can go and download on the Fabrik's website. But things such as just a field, like name, that would be a field type element. Maybe I need to have a database join because I want to join to another table to populate a drop down, let's say. Maybe I just need a date. Maybe I need a Google map. So there are different types of elements that I could put onto this form. Radio buttons, whatever it is I need. And that's what we do in the elements. So basically you have elements that make up the pieces of the form that are connected to a list. So what would we do if we were going to build one? First thing we would want to do is we would want to get an overall sketch of what we're going to do. Before I showed you a picture of a coffee napkin with something scribbled on it, when that could work. And believe me, I know I've done things where we've basically just had handwritten scribbled notes that we built stuff from. But the more complex an application gets, the more detailed you really need to get in your layout. So you can see in here, in the upper right-hand corner, we have a very simple little layout, a custom newsletter component. Then below that, you'll see now we've got a custom app where we're going to do something that's much more complex. And so we really need to map out the tables. You really want to see what are the relationships between those tables if you're going to do something really big. Okay? And it doesn't have to be, done with a program like that. But if you can, it makes for a very nice, neat roadmap to go by, as well as a nice, neat roadmap for you to show the client and have them approve, so that way when you go in afterwards and show them something and they say, I didn't know it was supposed to do that, well, you can say it's right here. You can show how it was laid out. The other thing that I always recommend you do is you spec out your access levels. So in other words, I need parents to be able to see these. I need staff to be able to see this. I need teachers to be able to see this. I need administration to be able to see all of this. And so you're just specking out where you're going to have access levels on things. And then also, of course, layout. You would want to have some layouts designed. I don't show any of those here, but you want to have, what do I want a details page to look like? Things like that. Just like if you were building a website, these details that you would get. Same thing in building an application. And then the diagramming those things, sorry. You might want to also notate your database connections on there too. You'll notice we put the Joomla database up there on that one more complex layout there. Because you may have applications where you're tying to other databases, and so you want to show what's on what is in which database. And so show your database connections in your plans as well, if you've got something that is that complex. All right, so let's build something in our little sample site that we've got there. I do like to tell people, it's always, go over your plan. What am I going to be building? You've got a map of it, and then you're going to implement it. In other words, that's where we're going to build it, and then you want to test it. And then you probably have to go back and do a little more work and test it again, just like any other build. So what we're going to look at in here is a very simple app, and it kind of is. You probably wouldn't build an app for this, but it's just something that we can do pretty quickly. So, and I actually had somebody who had a very similar situation. So they had newsletters, and they wanted to be able to put their newsletter. They wanted their admin to be able to put the newsletters up there. So let's start there. They wanted it to be very simple. They wanted the admin to be able to add newsletters on the website, but they wanted it to be sortable by a primary topic and a secondary topic is the way they wanted this one set up. But we're just going to say we have a topic. And then we also want to be able to sort by our contributors. So who was the person who contributed in the newsletter? So to do this, if we want to make it something that could grow, now we could just make one single table and we could say, here's the contributor field and here's the topic field. But if we do that, people could type it in however they want to, this admin. And maybe the one time they say, well, the topic is money, and the next time they put the topic as finance, or maybe the next time they say finances instead of finance. So if we really want to create something that's going to be more structured and easier to search by, then we need to create a table for our topics. So, and then we're going to give them a way to manage those topics. So that admin, maybe she goes to put it in and she's like, oh, wait, I need a topic that's called finances. Well, we're going to allow her to put a topic in there. As well as we're going to have a contributor table, because maybe Donald Duck's going to write this time, and in 3 months down the road, he's going to write again. So he would be used again. We don't want to have his name spelled differently later on. So we're going to create a contributors table that we can also allow that admin to add contributors to. Then we're going to have a list of the newsletters, and we're going to have, the topic, who wrote in this one, the name of the newsletter, a PDF of the newsletter, and we're going to give them a management form to upload those. We'll have a details page to see all that information on one of those, and maybe we want to have it so we can export our list. So we kind of have an idea of what we're going to build. And so what we're going to do now is, we're going to go back over to this Joomla site that I have here. And again, this is just a basic Joomla. I've got Protostar in there, and I haven't done anything really other than add Fabrik and JCE. So in Fabrik, we're first going to go and create a list. And we said first thing we need to do is create a topics table. So we're going to create a table called topics. Topics. Now, you'll see there are a ton of different settings inside of a list. We're going to be doing the basic things here. So all you must have are a name, and then we also need to have what table. Now, it is by default connecting to our Joomla database, and it's thinking that we want to create a new table. And so it's already put a name here, which we do want to do that. But I want you to note that you could actually connect to a database table that already exists. And a lot of times we do this if we want to pull data, like we want to pull users and be able to export out to CSV, or we want to pull our articles and export. So sometimes we use it just to tap into different things in Joomla. But we're going to actually, this is all a new app that we're building, and so we're going to name this a Fab. So I like to put something that's going to, a little extension that's going to push it to the top of the list, because as you saw in those drop downs, there's a lot of tables in here. Those are all starting with J's. I know something that starts with an A is going to start up at the top. So 2 things, the name of the table and the name of the list. Now I'm going to save it. And now Fabrik just did like, whoops, I've got one more thing I need to do here. I'm just going to say this is a default content type, meaning it's just going to do its normal create a list, create a table thing for me. The content types are really cool, and maybe if you guys really get to using it, we can do that in another session because they're really cool. All right, so now, once we save that list, you see we have a list named topics. If I go to the forms, I have a form named topics. I have a group named topics. And I have 2 elements on that table. I told you it would automatically create the ID for me, which is an internal ID. So it's the primary key, basically. It is going to auto increment. And then we have a date time stamp. So it's going to date time stamp when the record was created. Okay, so it went ahead and created 2 things for us. Now, the thing is, though, that form doesn't have anything on it yet, really, because you can't see those things. But we know this is a topic table. So we want to create one field called topic. So this is going to be, we'll say topic name. This is the topic name. It is just a regular field. It is going to go on the topics group. And now I'm going to save and close that one. So now we actually do have another column we just created on that table. I'm going to, so that we can start seeing some of this, I'm going to show you right here. If I go to list and I look at view data, I can see this would show me the list of the records on that. But you can see there's no records yet. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to add a record. So if I hit add, this shows me that form that was created, right? That right now only has 1 element on it that we can see. The other 2 elements are hidden, the ID and the timestamp. So we're going to say this one is money is our topic name. And you'll see it has created one. Here's ID 1 and here's the timestamp. Now, that's not very good for us as a user. We don't know what's on that, what the topic is on that. So we're going to go back to our elements, and you can see over here that there's a column that says show in list. I'm going to make that show in the list. So now we're actually going to see the topic name. When I go back to my list and I view my data, you're going to see there's the topic name. And a lot of times, by the way, I go ahead and hide the ID and the timestamp. They really don't need that. Maybe they need the ID if you think they might start have duplication problems. So sometimes we leave that on, but the timestamp really doesn't matter so much. In this instance, it wouldn't matter. So we have a topic. Let's add a couple more topics in here so that we've got them. Let's see, sports. This is a pretty eclectic newsletter we've got going on. Community. So we've added a few topics here. So we've got some topics. Now we want a contributor table. So these are going to be our writers, correct? So these are the people who are going to be contributing. So we're going to say, I would like to make a new list, and I'm going to call this my authors table. And again, I'm going to give it a little extension in the front of the table. If I look here now, you can see there's that table that we created last time. So that table created, and it created the columns for us. So I'm going to save my authors and save that. Now we actually have 2 lists, 2 forms, 2 groups, and now we've got a lot of elements because we had the 2 new ID and date time. Now once this starts happening, you start having multiple lists, multiple forms, you're going to want to start looking at these filters that are over here on the left-hand side. So I'm going to say I want to filter by the author's form. Now you can see there's only 2 elements on there. So I'm going to create a first name, name, we'll spell it correctly. And this is going to go on my authors group. And then I'm going to make a last name. The cool thing about this, too, when you're structuring it this way, you're really setting up the client to grow their application. And what I mean by that is, right now we're just going to put a first and last name for each author. But let's say, we're in the age of social media. So maybe we would want to, under that author, give their Twitter handle, their Facebook link. This gives us a way to relate all of those to those authors, because they would go on this table. And so then anytime I say, here's the author that contributed this, if someone clicks on that author, goes to their page, all of their data is listed with them. So the other thing we're going to do is we're going to do this we're going to turn on so we can see their first and last name, so that when we create our new authors, they show up there. So I'm going to now show you, though, front end. So I've only showed you staying in the back end here for adding things. But remember, I told you those menu items are there. So let's go to our main menu, and we're going to go ahead and start creating those admin forms for our person who's going to add these in. So let's say we want them to be able to add new topics. So we're going to say, we're going to call this topic manager. And it's going to be a Fabrik list, and it's the topics list. So we're going to save that one. If I look at my front end, now, obviously, we would probably not want to just make this public like this. We would probably want this to be behind a login, but for our demo, we're just going to leave it out there public for you to see. But so you can see here's the topic manager. But the same way that it worked in the back end, I could do another. I could add, and I could say, yeah, I want to add something that's on events. So I can add to this from the front end as well. Then I'm going to also go ahead and make a menu going to my author manager. Oh. So again, this is going to go to Fabrik, lists, and our authors. Save and close this. So we have the same thing. So now this admin that we have, we can let her go here. We'll pretend like she logged in. If we have time, I'll show you how to go ahead and make these for login only. But so she could go in here and she could say, oh, we've got some new authors. So we've got Robbie Adair is going to write some things for us. I wish I had time for that. And then Donald Duck, he's got a little more time. He's going to write some things for them. And I don't know. Let me think of somebody else. I don't know, John Smith. That sounds good. So we've got some authors as well. So we've got some authors, we've got some topics, but now what we need is we need these newsletters, right? So we were laying the foundation for making our newsletter application here a little more robust by having topics separate and authors separate. The other good thing about this, by the way, is if I had misspelled something, like maybe I misspelled money, well, I could very easily go in here and edit this and spell it correctly, and it would fix it everywhere it is. Because what's going to be laid in our other forms is the ID of this topic name. So it gives us a flexibility later on of making things very nice and neat. Good data management. Okay, so let's go back to Fabrik, and now we're going to set up our newsletter list. So this is going to be our newsletters. And again, we're going to call this, oh, and by the way, I'm putting this extension in AFAB, which is something I just use all the time. But we have websites now where we've built multiple applications for them that do different things. And so we will make the extension up there maybe increment. So maybe it's like AFAB 1 for all the tables that are associated with one application, and AFAB 2 for all the tables that are associated with another application. So it just makes it very nice and neat and tidy, which is, again, another reason to make sure you kind of have that mapped out plan so that you notate what your tables are. Okay, so I'm going to save that. And I'm going to go ahead real quickly, even though we don't have anything on it. I'm just going to make our other menu so that I don't have to go do this later. So this is going to be the newsletter manager, and then we'll go make some others. But we'll make the oops, that's not the right thing. We're going to make the list view first. All right. So I went ahead and just made a link so that we would see it right here. But there's nothing in it, right? We've got to go and put this together. So now is where it starts getting really fun. Now we're going to tie things together. Okay? So I'm going to go into the elements because we've got to put some elements on this thing. So the first thing we're going to do is the newsletter title. All right? So newsletter title. And then we're going to do the topic. Now, with topic, we're not just going to choose a field. This is not just a fill in the blank. This is going to be a database join because we want to join over to our topics table. All right? So we're going to go to data, to our tables, and we're looking for the topics table. Now, there's two parts to this. What value do we want to go in there? And you'll see there's a recommended bracket. That's like really is recommended. I mean, a good database structure would mean I want to put the ID in there. I don't want to put the label in there. I want to put the value. I want to put the ID for my value. For my label, though, now that's where I want to show the name because if I just put 1 through 3, I wouldn't even know what topic that was. So we want the topic name to show up in the drop-down, but we want the value of those to be the IDs. So we're going to save and close that. So let's go ahead and just because now it's getting cool. So if I hit add, so I'm going to go to the newsletter form, you'll see here's where I can put the title. And look, there's our topics. So I could pick these topics. If there's not a topic that I needed, then I could go to my topic manager and I could add one. And you're like, well, golly, that's kind of cumbersome, isn't it? Like you have to go back over the topics and now I've got to go back over and do my newsletter ad. Yeah, that is cumbersome. So you know what? We'll just fix that for them so that she can just stay in that one. We'll go in here and we'll say, okay, here's our database join. And we'll say, you know what? Let's allow her to add one from the front end. Okay? So we'll save and close that. Now let's go back and refresh our form. And let's go in here. And you'll say, oh, community events, sports. Oh, man, this one, this one's about concerts. So I'm just going to add that. Save it. Okay. And there's concerts. So it's automatically added it for us without us having to go back out and go add it on the other form and come back. So you can have just one consolidated form here. You don't really have to give them a topics manager, an author manager, and this, although I still would give them those options because let's say they added concerts here, but then later on their boss says that should be called rock concerts. Oh, man. And they've already put it on 3 newsletters. Well, that's okay. They can just go to their topic managers, and they can go in here, and they can say, yeah, let's make this called rock concerts. And now everyone out there, topic out there that had the value of 5 is automatically pulled on its new label. Okay? So the other thing we want to do is our author. So we're going to say, who is the author? I think I call them contributors in our design, but that's okay. This is going to be another database join, right? Just like the one we just did. One little caveat, though. I'm going to do something a little different for you. And now for something not completely different, but a little different. I'm going to title the authors. I'm definitely going to pick my ID as the value. But now the label. What am I going to put for the label? Am I going to give them the first name to drop down, or am I going to give them the last name to drop down? It's kind of like, well, I mean, probably I could do last name. What if there's 2 Smiths? Now, how do I know which Smith it is? You'll notice that down here below label, there's also a concatenated label. And so you can actually go in here and say, well, I want the, and you'll see there's this table holder. I want to have the last name and then comma and then a first name. And you can see they give you a little help there. They tell you exactly how it should be laid out here. So like I want people.last name, comma, quote, and then whatever's between the quotes is the text it's going to give you, and then another comma to show another variable. Okay? So we're going, and I'm probably going to mess this up the first time, by the way. So we're going to do this first, underbar. Oh wait, I said last name first. So we're going to say this table dot. I don't even think we have to do this table in this instance, but let's just do this first. Oh, I said last name. Whew. last name, comma, quote. We're going to want a comma space, quote, comma, and then this table dot first name. For some reason, I think I've got something wrong in that. We're going to see here in a second, because if I do, it'll just crash out. Yep. Okay. Hang on one second. Let me look at this real quickly and see what I did wrong for you guys. Let's see. We could just do the, hang on. I may not need to have this table on these, but I probably need to have the, hang on, let's see if I did that right yet or not. Yeah, I could put the, yeah, okay, I got it there. Okay. I didn't need this table. I was thinking I did in that one, but I don't. So you can use this table in certain instances. You have to sometimes, particularly when there's repeating events anyway. And so I thought I had to have it, but I didn't. But yes, I could have put the AFAB underbar authors dot in front of it. I could have done that. But I didn't really have to have it in this instance because I was just referring to that. And by the way, we've gotten very, very complex inside of this concat label. You can do all kinds of things. You can even do queries inside of this concat label. So you can get really intense with this one if you want to. But we've got it. So we've got last name, first name. We'll save that. So now you can see from here, it lists them this way for me. So I can see their last name and their first name. Now, we also want to have a description, let's say. So we want to have a description of this, or a summary. And that I want to have a large area. So I'm going to use a text area for that. Okay? So I've got a text area. There's a lot of things. I'm not really going in detail on all these elements, but as you can see, anytime I change what type of plugin this element is going to use, it changes everything down here. So like when we were on database join, you can see it gave me those options to like, where do I want to tie my data? And by the way, you can do where statements so that you can limit how the data is pulled in and filtered in. With a text area here, we could actually put how big do we want it to be and all of that. A lot of your layout controls are down here. You could also turn on a WYSIWYG editor if you want to for them. So like if you want that admin to be able to make things bold and put links in it and all that, we could do that. I'm just going to make it a simple one for right now. And then I'll show you the difference. So this is just a basic summary. Or we could have gone in there and said, let's turn on the WYSIWYG editor for them. Let's make this thing a little wider, like 150. Let's save that.
Hey, Robbie, what's the limit?
Ooh, I went way too big there. I'm sorry, what's the limit for? Are you talking about limit on here?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
This tab? That's if you want to limit them to a certain number of characters. So hang on, let me fix that thing that I went kind of crazy on there. Let's just go to 50, and I'll show you. We're going to say that they can't put more than 500 letters in here. Or let's do words. And you can see you can switch between characters or words. So I'm going to say I can only have 500. No, let's do characters. 500 characters. And I'm going to save that. Now you'll see the difference on the front end is it's going to actually have a, hang on, let me turn off the WYSIWYG because I think that's going to make it not show up. Hang on. There we go. So you see my little character counter here, and as I'm typing, it'll count down so they can see, and it'll tell them when they've exceeded their character and they can't type anymore. So you can limit the number of characters they put in there. So that's limit. All right, so let's save and close that. And then the other thing we want is we want to have a PDF upload because they make this beautiful, beautiful newsletter in PowerPoint, and they want to create a PDF and share it with the world. So we're going to say this is going to be our PDF version, and this is going to be a file upload. Now, there are a ton of different variations you can do on this, on the file uploads, by the way, size, the type, all of that. So I definitely want to put that we want PDFs to be allowed, because that's what I'm going to try putting up here. You can put where do you want it to go in your Joomla site. Do you want it to go in images? Do you want it to go in a special folder? If this form is emailing the results, do you want it to email the file with it, or do you want it to make it an attachment? Do you want to change the file name? What do you do if there's already a file with that name? I mean, you have a ton of options here, as well as, by the way, the way it's going to display in the list view, the way it's going to display in the details view. If these are images, if you want to create thumbnails, if you want to allow for cropping, and where do you want to put those crops? Storage, you can tie over to Amazon, and you can actually have these uploads go straight into their Amazon buckets. Ajax upload, this would allow them to upload multiple files at one time, and you can limit how many they can upload at one time. This is going to run Ajax, so that's why it's called the Ajax uploader. So there's a ton here. So I just want you to see there are a lot of options. We don't have time to go through every variation. We're going to allow for a PDF to be uploaded here, and we're going to make it a link to the file, because this is not an image, so we're just going to make it a link to the file. So we're going to save that. So now let's go look at our form and see what we've got. Now you see here's the PDF version. Choose the file. So if I choose a file on my desktop here, my trusty test upload, and we'll say this one is, this is, I don't know, what month is it? It's September. This is September 2016 is the name of our newsletter, because we're very original like that. And it's about community, and Donald Duck wrote for us. And here's all the stuff this is a summary of what you're going to find in that. And then we've picked our file that we want to upload here. Now we're going to save it. All right. So now, again, I haven't turned on which elements I want to show up here yet. So let's go back here to our elements, and let's say I'm going to select them all, and I'm going to show everything in the list right now. But now I'm going to go back over here. I don't want the date the timestamp. I don't want the ID. I really don't want the PDF version yet to show there, and I don't want the summary. So really all I want to do is the title, the topic, and the author. So now let's go back and refresh this look. So we've got title, topic, and the author, right? Now we need to actually put a few more on here, and we'll call this one March of 14. This one was about events, and it was Donald Duck. We'll do this. I'm actually not going to put a PDF on every one of these. I'm just going to give us some more sample data here. This one will be January of 2016, and this one was also about events. This one was also written by Donald. No, let's say I did it. Save that. Now, the reason I'm trying to put a little bit of information here is because I want you to see that now we could actually come in here and go, hey, let's group by topic. And so you can see how it splits it. It says, well, there's one that's about community, and there's two that are about events. Or maybe I want to sort by author, and it says, oh, here's one by Robbie and two by Donald. So this is just built into the list view. Now, we could get more complex, and we could add some more things to our list view. So we could go here to the list, because we want her to be able to download it, a CSV of this, let's say. So we'll go to our newsletters, and maybe we want her to also be able to search on this. So we say, yeah, let's let her search. And let me just save that, and I'll show you what it did. It's going to give you a little search box over here. Whoops, that's the advanced search. Hang on one second. I didn't want to search advanced. I want to do a search. Well, I'll leave that one on for you to see. I'm going to do a search all, though. The search all is cool. Let me turn that on. I'll show you. So here's the search all. So I could actually, right now it's looking at everything. But I could make this say search author only. And then I could limit this search back here to only certain elements. And I could say, I only want you to look at author. So now I would want that to say search author. Because this now only searches the author column. So it would be fast. It would speed it up. It's not looking at everything. It's only looking at one column. The advanced search is going to let me do a very complex, so I could do Boolean searches here basically. I can say, I want to know where the topic is equal to community, as well as I want the author to equal to Donald Duck. Actually, I don't think there's one of those. And then apply that. So now it's only going to show me this one because the topic is events and the author is Donald Duck. So it's allowing me to do an advanced search here. I'm going to clear all of those. So there's a lot of ways, as well as we could do something kind of simple here. Well, hang on. Let me finish showing you some of the other things we can turn on up there. We will also turn on we want to show our navigation. You see down here it says there are 10 of these. It's displaying 10 by default. So we can say, okay, 10's fine, but I want to show an all option at the bottom. I want to show a total number down at the bottom. So now you can see it says, it says there are a total of 3 items on here. And then on data, I want to, I don't want to pre-filter here necessarily. Publishing. I want to have where they could download a CSV. So front-end CSV export, you have to be registered to do it. We're just going to make it public so you can see it. So if we come here, and you'll see now I could go in here and I could export to CSV. It did it. It created it. And we'll open it and see it. Maybe. There we go. My Excel was just a little slow to boot up here for us. Oh, my goodness. It's being very slow. But you can see here, and I actually forgot, I didn't turn off the raw, so we're getting double because we're getting the raw. Raw means, like here is a good example. Topic raw, that's my IDs. Regular topic is going to show me my labels. Okay. Sometimes you need the raw data, and that's why it's there. Sometimes you need those values instead. So this shows you it just pulled down everything out of that table, and you can see how the files are being stored, which is a link. Okay. All right. And was there one more thing I was going to show you? You can also turn on an import. Be very careful with that because they need to have the information right before they import, or they could overwrite your information, because you can overwrite. You can select to overwrite when you're pulling that import in. All right, so I think that's good. Now, the other thing that I wanted to explain to you from this front end side was this is the list view. There's also a details view. So like if I wanted to see all the information, because see, I don't see the summary, I don't see the link to the file. If I wanted to see it all, that's when I would go to the view. If we go to the view, now I see everything. I can see the title, the topic, the author, the summary, and a link to the PDF. Now, this is the basic template that's in Fabrik. It's a Bootstrap one. It's just a basic template. All of these views, though, you can create your own template. So you can create custom templates of the details view, of the list view. You saw in that private school that we had done, we did custom list views for them. We did custom details views. Some of them we've even done the list view would just be icons, pictures of the people. So like your author view could just be the author faces instead of a list view. So you can do all kinds of cool things with the views. You can make them look like whatever. The other thing is sortable columns, which is a big deal for a lot of people. They're used to their Excel, so they like to have sortable columns. So if I wanted to make these on the newsletter, I could go in and I could say, let's let the author be sortable in the list view settings. So we're going to say allow ordering. So we'll save that, refresh it, and now you can see I could sort by the author. And I could do that on the others as well if I wanted to. So like topic, same thing. I could go in here and I could say, let's let this be ordered. Oops. Okay. I have to give it time to catch up with me, obviously. Okay. No. Okay. Well, I've already saved it. The other thing that I wanted to show you on there is let's make the title go right to the details. So if we go to list view settings, we could order by title if we wanted to. Maybe you'd want to. I don't know why. And then we want this to link to the details. So now, when we refresh this, okay, you'll see we've got newsletter title. And if I click on one of these newsletter titles, it takes me to that details page. Whoops, no, because I've got this so that it's editable, sorry. So it went to, instead of going to its details, it went to its edit form because I have edit open to everyone right now. If I didn't allow editing here, then it would go to the details page. So let's look at that because that would be a little more handy probably for you. If I were logged in as the admin, though, and I clicked on that, it would take me to the edit, so I could edit it. But if I'm someone who's visiting, we want it to be that they just see the details page. So what we have to do is, on everything, and I wasn't really pointing it out, on the left-hand side, on elements, on forms, on lists, there's always an access over here. Access ties into the Joomla ACL. And so right here, you can see I could say, I view lists as public, but edit records I'm going to make to be a registered. And add, I'm also going to say has to be registered. Save that. Now let's go back and refresh this page. There we go. So now I've said to edit any of these or to add one, you have to be logged in. Notice I don't have the add button anymore in front of newsletters. I don't have an edit icon, as well as if I click on this name, it's just going to show me the details view. This is the public side of it, basically. This is what you want your just end users to see. But if I were the admin, let's go here. I need to log in. Here we go. I'm actually super admin, but that's okay. I'm going to log in if I remember my login. Okay, seriously, let me see if I can remember my login. Okay, I did remember it. Okay. Now remember, I'm super admin, but now when I go to that newsletter manager, you'll see I have the ability to edit it again. I can add new ones. I can delete some. So if I say, well, that one's not really good, we can just delete it in here. As well as if you're super admin, you can empty out the entire table. That's a dangerous thing. I always hide that from my end user, if you've got levels of admins, only the super user should see that empty bucket. So that kind of wraps up our little app, our mini app here. We did it pretty good amount of time. So are there any questions that you guys have?
Going to what you were just showing on that form, one of the things that I had to do, you have a field that you can show before the form and a field that you can show after the form. And for logged in users, I need to put directions. And so one of the things that I noticed, I had to go looking around in the documentation, but I found a way so that you could show certain things when it's an edit screen or when it's a new screen. It's not going to show the normal detail view.
Yes. So, like for instance, let's say on these newsletters, we wanted to have something that was an internal notation, internal notes, or maybe we want it to be something like, was this mailed or not mailed? Well, that's just something that we want to know as a staff, but that should never be out there in the details world for anyone else. So I could go back here to my elements, and I could say, I'm going to add a new mailed, and this is going to be well, we'll just leave it a field for now, but I probably would make this like, let's do, I'm trying to decide if I want to do it. Yeah, let's just do drop down. We're going to do a regular drop down in here, and we're going to say no. And let me move that out of the way. Yes. So now I only want this though to be seen. One, they have to be registered to add it and registered to edit it. But here's where you're talking about the details view. I do not want this to be seen by public. So this is only going to be for registered users as well. Okay. And then the same thing here. So basically I'm limiting this field to you have to be a registered user to see it. So now let's go in here and let's edit this one, let's say. And here it is. This one was mailed, we'll say. And this one was not mailed. Now, let's log ourselves back out of this site so that we are looking at this from a public view. If I look at this from a public view and I look at this page, there's nothing about mailed, yes or no. Right? But as soon as I am logged in, or if I'm in the back end, either one, because I'm logged into the back end, if I go to the back end and I say view data here, and I look at the details, there's the detail that says mailed yes, or if I looked at editing the form, I can edit this. And you could even give levels. So like you saw how I could say who could edit it. So I could have said only, next level up admin can edit this, because maybe only the person who mails it can edit that. But the other admins need to know whether it was or not sent.
Thank you. Yes, so there's a lot of flexibility.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I like to say, if you can dream it up.
Robbie, on the of it, pretty granular, limiting the amount of submissions that they put in per user group.
I'm sorry, is there a limit on the amount of submissions a user group can add?
Right. So say you have registered, you just want them to only be able to put in 5 a month or something along those lines, so they're not just dating you.
So you're saying, because I'm trying to make sure I'm following your question correctly. Let's say in this instance, I have a registered user, and you're wanting me to limit the number of authors they can submit.
Right. Well, articles, newsletters. So the amount of newsletters that they would actually be able to. It would be an article, right?
Yes. Now, for something like that, what we would do is we would write a little PHP script. And the cool thing about Fabrik is you can just plug in scripts all over the place. And so what I would do for what you're saying is, let's say I wanted to limit newsletters. I could go into the newsletters form, so I'm editing the form itself, and then there's a form plugin, and we could go into form plugins. This is where, let's say I wanted to have it emailed to me when somebody submits a form. I can do that in here. The other thing I can do is some PHP code. Now, there are some, you can pick when do you want this script to process. In this case, we probably want it on submit. And then you can just write some code in here that would say, if they belong to this group, count how many records they have on the table. If they exceed whatever that number is, don't allow this to submit. So you can do it. It would take a little bit of PHP code, but it can be done very easily.
Okay, all right.
Like in the private school instance I was giving you, you don't want the same student to apply for the same school year more than once. And so we checked, have they already submitted for this school year for this student? And if that's true, then they can't submit again.
Right.
And if you want to do it, there's other ways too, by the way. So you could have a counter that counts how many times they've submitted, and then you could just go against that counter, but looking at that number, if that makes sense.
Oh, no.
There's also, and there's also, go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to note with that, there is a element that I love. It's like one of my favorite elements. It's called the calc element. And basically, it just lets you write code looking at other fields. So like, we figure out how old a kid's going to be the first day of school as to what grade they can actually apply for. So we look at when they fill out the date of birth and they pick which school year they want to apply for, we have a little calc that says, here's their date of birth, will be the first day of that school year, let's figure out how old will that kid be exactly on that date. And that's all done in this little script in a calc plugin. The other thing I've done is on the fly building previews of cards. Let me see. Let's see. I'll show you this. If it's still live here. So like with this place, it's a hospital, delivers a lot of babies, obviously. Hang on. I'm having trouble with my internet right now. Close some things. It may be too slow. But anyway, so I use the calc element to do a preview of the card. So you pick, here's the baby, here's the little message I want to write on there, and then it creates the birth announcement. Or here's the patient, and I want to pick this background, and I want to say this, and it shows them a little preview of the card they're making, and then they can submit, and then it'll be delivered to the patient. So, and I used a calc field for that. I don't know what's going on. My internet is really getting slow here, sorry. But for things like you're talking about, sometimes I use that calc element to do little hidden calculations like what you're talking about. Like, so while they're filling this out, I could even actually just show them, you've submitted 3 newsletters already. And then we can even put a message that says, you've already submitted 5, you've met your limit, you can't submit this. So you could even do it before the on submit in the form. You could actually do it on the form itself, like when they load that form, and we look at their user ID and say, how many times have they done this? And we can show it to them.
Is there a plugin for amortization table already built?
You know, I don't know. There are so many, but I'm not sure that there is one for that. Let's see. No, I didn't think so. But if you had a client that needed it, we could definitely probably build one for them. So like this is what I was talking about. Right here where it says select baby above, that's actually a calc element. So then when we pick one of these babies, it's going to show me that I've basically done a calculation, a little calc that builds this preview, and it says, look at the field of the baby, which baby they pick. Go grab that baby's image and show it here. Grab their name, grab their weight, all that. Go grab it and show it here this way. And then I say, but also look and see what they picked down here as far as which background they want. And it'll recalculate every time you make a change on any field that you're watching with the calc. It'll make a change. And so then I can make a change every time. Like here, if I'm typing a message, and you see I'm using the countdown there. Whoops. That's if I want to put my own. And you can see now it's refreshed this up here, and it shows the text that I did. And then do I want to email this to someone? You know, do I want to put my own photo? So I can actually pick a different photo and replace this photo on here and create that. That's using the calc element.
Wow.
It's cool. You can do all kinds of stuff. I mean, literally, I've done all kinds of things. I just can't even, like, off the top of my head, remember all the things we've done with the calc element, but it's pretty awesome. And I'm not the only one that does a ton of things. I like see people talking about stuff on the forum. I'm like, ooh, that's a good idea. That's cool. We'll try that. So.
If you didn't put a, like your AFAB prefix, would it just pick up Joomla's prefix that's already there? It just won't have any.
Right. Like when I type topics, it's going to take the name of the list, and by default, give me that as the name of the table, but I can edit it, and I do suggest you do that, because topics would be all the way at the bottom, right? And authors would be all the way at the top, and the newsletter would be at the bottom underneath all those, because I think they started with a was it an F or something, whatever it started with. So it would be above or below the Joomla tables, but I would have topics way down here and author way up here. That's why I like to label them together. You can name it whatever you wanted to. I just like to have something that's going to show up at the top so I don't have to scroll for days, as well as I want all of the ones that are, so like on that slide I just showed you with the baby announcement, we had a baby announcement, and then we had patient cards. Well, those are two different applications. So one's got like, you know, a announcements, and one has like a baby or whatever it is, you know. And so we've got, so that all the tables associated with each one of those are together when we look in the drop down. And so like with that too, by the way, it looks kind of simple on the front end, but we're actually, so like the baby, we're grabbing from a different table that they have. They can, so like they can input the baby information themselves. And so we're grabbing it from that table. Then we also, they have K2 on their site, and they keep all of the physician's information there. And so we actually tie over to the K2 table for the physician information. So we're actually utilizing different sections of Joomla as well to pull all that data together and consolidate in there. And then they have another table where they can manage the back end of the cards, so they can put new cards if they want to and things like that.
This is great.
Cool.
Yeah.
So now you guys all need to download Fabrik and install it and play around with it and tell me what you built.
Definitely.
You can do some cool stuff. I mean, and literally sometimes whenever I do the presentations, I have people by the end of the presentation, they show me they have already downloaded, installed it, and they've started building something. They're like, oh, this was what I needed to do, X, Y, Z. Like person had all these like bugs or plants, I can't remember, and they had like just tables of like, you know, the species and then the breakdown of the species, all this stuff. They had already done it, and like, because Fabrik allows you to do both, you know, regular joins, so you can do just a normal left join or whatever. But you can also you can create many-to-many relationships with Fabrik, which is what you kind of are missing in a lot of the other app building extensions, is they don't give you the level of accessibility to the database. I guess that's the best way for me to say it, which was why in the end it was the one that we found gave us the most flexibility.
Hey, Robbie, do you have like a cheat recommend on the Fabrik site?
Do I have a what I'd recommend?
Like a cheat quick starter, more or less like a quick starter.
There is on, and I'm working on some new videos. I'm going to get some more videos. But if you look right on the homepage, Rob, who was the original developer, did this. He built a web app in 30 minutes, and it's kind of like what I just did for you. Only his is a little more detail. And so if you watch that, I find it's a really good start for just, okay, here's what I'm going to do in order. You know, just like what we just did. I'm going to get my idea. I'm going to build a list. I'm going to do another list. These are the things I have to now tie together and build this list. It's going to pull it all together. And he does that in there, in that app that he builds there in that video.
Okay, great.
All right. Any other questions, guys?
I guess not. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording.